You've never met the real author of your life story, but it's been writing for you the entire time. Every time you overthink a simple message, every time you say yes when everything inside you screams no, every time you feel small in a room full of people you admire, that's not your conscious choice, that's the subconscious script. And the terrifying part is, you didn't write it, it was shaped before memory, in glances, in punishments, in the space between words. It was carved by repetition, emotion, and silence, long before logic ever had a say. That's why change is so hard, because most people are trying to fix a story they've never read. They journal, they meditate, they say, I am powerful. But their body still tenses around rejection, still panics at closeness, still flinches when kindness feels unfamiliar, because beneath the affirmations, the subconscious is still loyal to the old myth. Carl Jung didn't exaggerate when he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's not poetic, it's mechanical, because your subconscious isn't deciding your future, it's repeating your past. You think you're making decisions, but often you're reenacting patterns, not because you're weak, but because your survival once depended on it. Your mind became a theater, and the roles were handed out early. The good child who doesn't speak up, the hero who saves everyone but himself, the healer who forgets her own name. You didn't audition for these parts, you just learned that safety meant performance. And now that performance is breaking, because you can only act for so long before the script collapses under its own weight. And here's the truth no one told you. You cannot change the story by thinking harder, because the subconscious doesn't speak thought, it speaks image, it listens to symbol. It believes what is felt, not what is said. So if you want to reprogram it, you need to stop shouting affirmations at a mind that only understands metaphor. You need to learn to speak its language, and that language is myth. Your subconscious doesn't want instruction. It wants immersion. It wants to see you live differently. It wants new roles, new rehearsals, new scenes repeated with emotional truth until the old ones lose their power. But before you can write that new story, you need to ask one question. What myth am I still living in? Because no matter how smart you are, no matter how awakened or evolved, if you don't know the story your subconscious is still obeying, you'll keep waking up inside it. Not because it's true, because it's familiar. And the subconscious doesn't seek what's good, it seeks what it knows. But you are here now, which means something in you is ready to question, to unlearn, to remember this is not reinvention, this is reclamation. You were never meant to live in someone else's story. So let's begin, not by solving the puzzle, by stepping into the myth, the one buried beneath all the noise, the one with your name on it. It begins, like all myths, in a forest. The subconscious speaks in dreams. Your life is one of them. A house you always revisit, a stranger whose face shifts, a staircase that descends endlessly and you don't know why you're going down. You wake up, but something stays with you, a feeling, a symbol, a question. That's the language of your inner world. It's not rational, it's relational. Your subconscious doesn't want clarity, it wants resonance. And the symbols it trusts most, are ancient. Carl Jung called them archetypes, the inherited images etched into the collective unconscious. They are older than you, older than culture, older than language. The warrior, the mother, the orphan, the trickster, the sage, the lover, the shadow. They appear in dreams, movies, art, conflict, and desire because they live inside every one of us. Not as stories, as psychic blueprints. The subconscious doesn't understand I'm good enough, but it understands the hero stepping up when it counts. It understands the orphan learning to trust again. It understands the sage who stays still in chaos. It understands the monster in the mirror, the shadow, and the courage it takes to face it. You've played these roles without knowing. Maybe your entire life has been one long audition for safety, and the role you've been performing is killing you softly. Because here's the paradox. The archetype that saved you will also imprison you. The healer who was loved only when needed, the warrior who never rests, the lover who loses herself in everyone else's needs. The subconscious repeats what's rehearsed, even if it hurts, even if it's a lie. It doesn't care about your freedom, it cares about your familiarity. But once you become conscious of the script, you can rewrite it. And to rewrite it, you need to meet the archetype face to face, not analyze it and engage it. There's a man, 49 years old, a respected father, partner, and leader, but he couldn't feel joy. For years, he had dreams of a boy in a locked room. He finally followed that image into active imagination, eyes closed, breathing slow. He saw the hallway. He opened the door. There was the child, curled up, silent, ashamed. He didn't offer advice. He sat beside him, and for the first time in decades, he wept without apology. The next day, he told his wife, "I think I just met the part of me I abandoned so long ago, I forgot he was still waiting." That is what it means to speak in the subconscious's language, not to talk at it, but to listen, to feel, to see. Dogen once said, "To study the self is to forget the self, and to forget the self is to be awakened by all things." Because when you strip away the mask, when you surrender the role, when you stop performing and start remembering, you see symbols everywhere. A flickering candle, a locked door, a repeated number, a face in the mirror you finally recognize. These are not distractions, they are invitations. The subconscious isn't trying to trick you. It's trying to show you where you stopped looking. So ask yourself, what image keeps chasing you? What emotion keeps looping when you think you've grown? And what new image, what symbol could interrupt the loop? Here's the truth. You don't heal by solving, you heal by seeing, by feeling, by mythologizing what once made you small. So take the next step into the woods, into the symbols, into the myth you forgot, but never stop living. The forest is waiting, and it speaks your language. There is a story you've been living that you didn't know you were telling. It's written in the way you flinch when someone raises their voice, in the way you say yes just to avoid feeling abandoned, in the way you stop yourself from celebrating because joy still feels like a setup for pain. These aren't quirks. They're rituals, old rehearsals from a myth that didn't start with you, but still lives in you. And here's what most people never realize. Your subconscious doesn't change when you tell it something new. It changes when you show it a new myth to believe, one it can feel, one it can follow, one it can rehearse. Because no matter how powerful your intentions, your subconscious is still living in the last story it emotionally survived. And sometimes, to break the cycle, you have to step into something older than logic. You have to enter the realm where symbols carry more weight than strategies. You have to meet the archetype you've unknowingly been acting out. You've done it before. When you overgave to feel loved, you were the healer. When you held back tears to look strong, you were the warrior. When you made yourself invisible to stay safe, you were the orphan. These roles are not flaws. They were necessary, but they are not destiny. There comes a time when survival masks start to suffocate, when the performance begins to feel more like exile. And the only way forward is through story. There's a myth, few remember it, but it lives in the bones of transformation. A servant boy named Guion Bach is assigned to stir a cauldron of knowledge. For a year and a day he obeys, silent, dutiful, invisible, until 3 drops of truth spill onto his hand. He tastes them, and everything changes. He sees too much, feels too deeply, becomes something his old life cannot contain. So he runs. The sorceress Keridwen, enraged, chases him. He shapeshifts into a hare, a fish, a bird, fleeing through air, land, water. She follows, becomes a greyhound, an otter, a hawk, until finally he turns into a single grain of wheat. She, a black hen, swallows him, but the myth doesn't end there. 9 months later, she births him as Taliesin, the radiant poet, voice of wisdom, shape reborn through the fire of form. He didn't just escape, he became. This is not fantasy, it is blueprint. You've changed shapes to survive too. The perfectionist, the ghost, the chameleon, the expert. But what if your next shape isn't another adaptation? What if it's a return to the part of you that remembers how it felt before you were edited, before you were filtered into acceptability, before you became palatable enough to be loved? Your subconscious doesn't need more advice, it needs symbols, it needs emotional evidence that you're no longer that scared child. Still running, so show it. Walk into the conversation you've been avoiding. Say the truth, even if your voice shakes. Stop apologizing for needing time, space, boundaries, rest. Each moment you choose to show up differently, you're not just healing, you're myth-making. You are becoming the one your story has been waiting for. And this is where archetype becomes action, not by naming it, but by living it. The hero doesn't emerge when you feel brave. He appears when you feel terrified. And still take the next step. The sage doesn't come with credentials. She shows up when you stop fixing and start listening. And the lover returns when you love the parts of yourself you were taught to exile. You don't have to explain this to your subconscious. You just have to embody it, repeatedly, ritually, truthfully, because your subconscious is not skeptical, it's loyal. And the moment you give it a new pattern, a new emotion, a new story, it will echo it back. Not because you forced it, but because you made it feel safe to believe again. As Meister Eckhart once wrote, when the soul wants to experience something, she throws out an image in front of her and then steps into it. That's what you're doing now. So step. And if an image came to mind while listening, a shape, a symbol, a memory, drop it in the comments. Not for the algorithm, but for your subconscious. To mark the moment, to name the turning point, to step into the myth you were born to remember. Transformation always asks for something in return, not your hope, not your effort, your identity. Because to become who you're meant to be, something has to burn, and the first thing to go is the version of you that knew how to survive. The good one, the strong one, the quiet one, the one who never needed anything. You don't need that version anymore, but your subconscious still thinks you do. Because it remembers what happened last time you spoke up, what happened last time you cried, what happened last time you trusted. So it protects you, even as it imprisons you. And that's where the fire begins, not in destruction, but in revelation. You realize that what you thought was you was just rehearsal, a carefully performed myth of safety, and now the fire comes, not to punish, but to clear. This is where reprogramming truly begins, not in insight, in death. The death of the old reflex, the old shape, the old explanation. Jung didn't call this positive thinking, he called it individuation, the forging of the self through shadow, symbol, and surrender. And one of his greatest tools was active imagination, not passive visualization, but conscious descent. You sit, you breathe, you open the inner door and you walk in. One woman did this and met a bear, large, golden, silent. He led her to a cave. Every day she returned. She stopped asking questions, stopped rushing for answers. She learned that stillness was sacred, that slowness was strength, that rest could be ritual. Another man kept dreaming of a burning library. Every book was blank. He ran from it for years. Then one night he stepped inside. He sat in the smoke. He whispered, "I'm done with borrowed truths." The fire didn't hurt him, it revealed him. This is how the subconscious learns, through encounter, through image, through repeated emotional resonance, and sometimes the encounter is brutal. It's the panic attack you don't run from, the conversation you no longer avoid, the memory you let wash over you without drowning. That's the fire. And here's the paradox. The part of you that burns was never real. Only the mask melts. The self remains. You don't rise like a phoenix. You rise like a human who has remembered they were never the ashes. Hafiz once said, "I wish I could show you, when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being." That's what this fire is for, not destruction, illumination. So if everything feels like it's falling apart, good, the subconscious is watching, and if you stay with it, not judge it, not fix it, just stay, it will learn, it will shift, because when the story is no longer about survival, it becomes about return, to wholeness, to embodiment, to the image of you that always lived in the fire, but was never consumed by it. There comes a moment in every transformation when the old version of you is gone, but the new one hasn't fully arrived. You feel it in the space between breaths, the way silence no longer feels safe, the way joy feels suspicious, the way being seen feels like exposure instead of connection. This is not regression, it's the reprogramming taking root, because you've stepped out of the myth you were given, but haven't yet written the one that belongs to you. And now the subconscious is listening, not with logic, with curiosity. It's asking, what story do we believe now? And here's where most people get it wrong. They try to answer with performance. They adopt a new identity. They talk louder, move faster, heal harder. But that's not integration. That's costume change. You don't rewrite the subconscious by playing a new role. You rewrite it by embodying a new rhythm, slowly, consistently, with emotional evidence, not "I am powerful." But sitting in a room and not shrinking, not "I am enough," but resting without guilt. Not "I'm not afraid," but speaking the truth even when your stomach tightens and your hands shake. That's the kind of proof the subconscious trusts. Not slogans, symbols. This is the act of choosing a myth on purpose. The myth where the sage doesn't speak over others, but listens without trying to fix. Where the lover doesn't disappear into others, but stays rooted in their own skin. Where the warrior finally puts down the armor, not because the world is safe, but because peace has become more important than protection. But don't get romantic about it, this part is hard. Because when you stop living inside someone else's story, you feel lost at first. There's no map, no script, and yet this is where your life begins, in the slow rehearsal of new images, in the quiet decision to behave differently, in the moment you don't respond the way you always did and something inside you notices. That noticing, that's reprogram. It's the subconscious updating its definitions of love, of safety, of power, of you. But here's the warning Jung himself implied, even if he didn't always say it plainly. The danger isn't failure, it's inflation. Spiritual bypass, the temptation to crown yourself the hero without facing the cave, to identify with the archetype instead of integrating it. So stay humble, don't wear the mask of the sage to hide your confusion. Don't hide inside the warrior just to avoid grief. Don't pretend to be whole just because healing has become your brand. Let the myth shape you, not shield you. And remember, the truest symbols are subtle. They show up in how you speak to your reflection, how you end a conversation, how you hold a boundary without a sermon, without apology. This is the new myth you're choosing, not one of perfection, but of presence, of fluidity, of paradox. Because here's the paradox your subconscious understands best. The closer you come to wholeness, the more you realize nothing was missing, only hidden, only waiting, only silent, until now. So speak, and not just in words, in posture, in stillness, in how you move through the world when no one's watching. Let every act be a new story your body believes. Let every choice be a new sentence in the myth you're writing. Not for the audience, for the subconscious, because it's watching, and it's learning, and it will echo back whatever you show it most often. Let it echo truth, let it echo power, let it echo the version of you that no longer needs to explain itself. This is the myth you choose now. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours. And that changes everything. You came here to change, but something deeper was always waiting to remember. Not who you were in the eyes of others, but who you are beneath every name, every mask, every performance. The one who never needed fixing, only witnessing. This entire journey, through fire, through myth, through memory, was never about becoming someone new. It was about returning to the one you abandoned, the self beneath the scripts, the symbol that never left. Because your subconscious wasn't your enemy, it was your echo repeating the loudest story it was ever shown. But today, something's different. You're not reciting, you're rewriting. Not just with insight, but with image, with imagination, with embodied myth. The archetypes are no longer outside you, they are within. Not as fantasies, but as functions. The warrior speaks when you draw a boundary without rage. The sage whispers when you choose silence over performance. The child dances when you laugh without asking permission. The shadow appears not to ruin you, but to remind you where your gold was buried. And now you carry all of them, not as weight, but as wisdom. So what now? Now you walk into the world with your story intact. You live as the symbol you once searched for. You stop auditioning for worth. You become the mirror for others still trapped in old scripts, not by preaching, by existing, by being a walking contradiction to the myths they were given, a quiet rebellion against their programming. So here is the final invitation. Share the image that stayed with you, the symbol that spoke your name. Leave it in the comments, not for affirmation, but to leave a breadcrumb for someone else still finding their way through the dark. Because someone out there is still repeating the myth you just rewrote, and your echo might become their turning point. You are not your pain, you are not your pattern, you are not your past, you are the myth reborn, the subconscious reprogrammed, the light remembering itself. And the story, it doesn't end here, it begins right now, with the version of you who finally stopped performing and started returning.